There you go, Jim. Hi, Glenn. All right, so my sole duty this morning, I'm Glenn Morris, Chair of Economic Development and Planning Committee of the Chamber. And my sole duty this morning is to introduce Jim Cowdell. Everybody says a guy who needs no introduction and keep introducing him, but Jim, it's your show.
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning, folks out there and on the internet. Good morning to you. Happy New Year to everybody. I did want to start it off. You can't see it here on the screen, but here in live, Rick Starbutt is here. Rick, I just want to say thank you. Rick did 6 years on the council?
Yeah.
And how many on the school committee?
6.
So 12 years of service, and so he's officially an ex-city councilor now, but I'm sure he'll still be active in the chamber. So thank you. Thank you. And also a current member of the EDIC Board of Directors, so and has been very supportive. We're here today to talk about development, specifically what's going on the waterfront. With me is Noah Maslan. I do want to just kind of set the table though before we move into Noah's presentation. I think the key to if you're from Lynn, or if you live in Lynn now, and you look at the Lynnway, right? You kind of scratch your head and you look, it's the Atlantic Ocean. You have fast food, Kentucky Fried Chicken, fast food. You had a flea market and mass merchandise, used car lots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we did, the first thing, which really led to where we are today, was we set a vision, right, for the waterfront. And that, and Rick, you would remember these meetings, but we had 19 public meetings. And I've been around, as Glenn said, for 100 years, but it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And the reason for that is, first of all, a lot of people came to it, whether you were a resident, a business owner, elected officials, and they all came. And it was kind of like this blank sheet of paper. And we said, so we know what's there now, and we know mistake after mistake has happened. What do you want there? And it was kind of just like that. What do you want there? And people, there were no negatives. There were no really bomb tosses that showed up with agendas. It set the vision. We had 19, as I said, public meetings, and the message was loud and clear, right? It's the Atlantic Ocean. Why can't we have a vibrant waterfront in Lynn, Mass? And so that set the stage for the zoning that is there today, which allowed this project to come to the city of Lynn. It set a vision, right? And so now you're starting to see development happening. The Beacon Chevrolet site up at the North Harbor was vacant for 40 years. Today, there's a $115 million development there. The flea market that I referenced, mass merchandise, is gone. And so you're seeing a $175, $200 million development project there. But the largest investment in Lynn's history, and Glenn, you know I'm old, it's in Lynn's history. It's the largest investment we've ever had. Oh, we got somebody coming in, sorry. That's okay. Is the project that we're going to talk about now. And so when Mayor McGee was mayor, it predates Mayor Nicholson, right? We brought in Samuels. We went after them because of the work that they did and their reputation that they had. And Noah can talk about Samuels and the history, but in Fenway, for instance, all that development that you did, we contacted the city officials in Boston. They couldn't speak highly enough as not only the product that you produced, but the way that you did it and how you brought inclusiveness to the process. And we recruited you, it was 4.5 years ago, maybe, to come to the city of Lynn. Originally, they were looking at downtown. And then they kind of just looked at the waterfront and said, why not, right? So it's my pleasure to introduce Noah. He's going to talk about the project. Perhaps he can tell us why Lynn and what you see going on in Lynn. And so, as I said, he represents the largest investment in Lynn's history, and we're really excited to have you in the city of Lynn. So, Noah.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you today and talk to you a little bit about the project. I want to thank Jim for really shepherding this project from before we were ever involved here. it's really been a remarkable partnership with the city over the last, well, 4 years, I would say, but with a lot of focus over the last year and a half, 2 years, in looking at the opportunity of the South Harbor site. I think partly there's so many things that have happened, but one of the most important pieces is all the enabling work, and the groundwork and planning that happened to create an opportunity to redevelop this site. And we wouldn't be here, honestly, we would not be here today if it weren't for that. I mean, all the planning work to create the vision for the site, which then and a lot of times this doesn't happen in municipalities where you have planning that actually translates right into zoning that can then translate into something that is actually developable. And then also from moving the power lines, which was a huge piece of work to even create the developable footprint to do that. It's just really tremendous effort. And then I would say it's been a really great partnership working with the city over the last year to come up with essentially a public-private partnership that sort of worked for everybody, worked for the community, and could create a financeable project. And we still have a long way to go, but we're really excited about it and really excited about the opportunity. And part of what's been happening is there's such a pressure on. We generally have a housing crisis, right, in Massachusetts. And so partly of what's been happening is there's been pressure from the urban core that sort of moved north, moved south and west to for an increased demand in housing. And so you've seen it all along Revere Beach. And you see it at Gibson Point, which is just across the General Edwards Bridge. And then with this site, as we looked at the opportunity here, so so Samuels and Associates is experts in doing mixed use development, with the vision of Joel Sklar and Steve Samuels. They transformed the Fenway, and part of that process actually was through an initial planning effort with the city of Boston, working in partnership to sort of rezone that neighborhood. And it's hard to do in the city of Boston, and you don't actually see it happen in many neighborhoods in Boston, but they were successful in doing that there. So let me just walk you through the site today. So this is the site today. These are recent drone photos.
I know everybody knows this, but
Yeah.
as you're coming over the bridge into the city of Lynn, this used to be the Harbor House, right? And so that was 40 years ago. That's the last use. So it's been vacant for 40 years. But as you're coming over the bridge into the city of Lynn, it is the first thing that folks see. So, sorry.
Yeah. And we did recently clear a bunch of brush and Phragmites. As you may know, there were some homeless folks who were living there for a while. And again, another great example of how we're working in partnership with the city, where the Lynn Shelter and others sort of worked to rehouse those folks, get them off the site, and then we sort of immediately came in and cleared the encampments that were there, and then cleared a bunch of brush from the site. So this is sort of how it looks today, and you could see actually along the shoreline where particularly I guess down here where the bulkhead has really failed in several locations. And that's actually one of our biggest challenges working with the state and coastal zone management, is how we end up sort of treating the coastal bank. Because for us to put this investment in here, and as you'll see, to put the park in place, we need a fortified coastal bank. It's got, it has to be solid, it can't erode. So we're gonna need to sort of negotiate that like, with the state. So I'll just walk you through the overall project. This is a sort of, this is a plan of the overall site, which includes essentially 3 buildings, approximately 850 units. And one of the most important components of the site that sort of fulfills the vision of the master open space plan and master harbor plan is the creation of essentially a new waterfront commercial district that leads down to an 8-acre park along the waterfront. So today, the waterfront is privately owned. But after this is done, we're essentially turning 8 acres along the waterfront over for public use, which will be a permanent public park. And then the idea here is to create a retail street with restaurants and a waterfront plaza here where there'll be events, movie nights and concerts that can help bring folks down and to the waterfront and really open it up for public use. And the, let's see, here is here's a conceptual sort of rendering of that public park, along with the plaza area here. And you can see that along the coastal bank, the treatment sort of, what we're proposing is to repair the bulkhead essentially right at the corner of the harbor and the Saugus River, where the fishing pier is, and then have a more of a stone revetment that follows the current line of where the shore has eroded.
So on that picture there,
Yeah.
from the city's perspective, we felt really strong that we just didn't want to have, say, 1,000 apartments there, and that was it. We really wanted to activate the area. So the 8-acre park, which can be enjoyed by anybody in the North Shore, was critical. But that commercial strip with a couple of restaurants and shops there, that was really important to us. We felt strongly that no disrespect to a developer, but we didn't want all residential. And in Samuel's case, neither did they. And so when we did those planning sessions, the public spoke very loudly and clearly that they wanted a place for recreation, a place to go eat, a place to shop. So that really was critical. This whole corner here that we're looking at, we feel will activate that waterfront.
And thank you for mentioning that, Jim, because that is one of the things that really attracted us to this, was to create this new sort of waterfront district. And Samuels has done something similar at the Hingham Shipyard as well along the waterfront. And it's important that we strike the balance of creating the right scale so that there's not too much retail, because it can't be, it's not sort of infinite, right? There needs to be enough there to create a place that will work year round. And so we settled on about 26,000 square feet. And so the idea is that there will be probably 20,000 square feet of food uses, restaurants in shops that are generally from, probably, could be as low as 500 square feet up to about 5,000 square feet for a restaurant. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my last point, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
So if you're looking on the waterfront here, just a little bit further, like say an 8-iron from here, will be the Harbor Park. So as you're trying to envision this, picture this with the 8-acre park, mass development is gone, mass merchandise is gone with a green space that connects the two properties, the 30 acres of the Harbor Park. The entire area is changing, and it's not decades away. This will happen in my lifetime. So this is happening now. So and I was just trying to say how it ties into other projects that are happening.
Yeah, and those other projects that are happening and the creation of the park will help create the place that will be able to support the rents that are required for this kind of investment. And I will say that, there was, we received a tax deal with the city. And part of the reason for that is the complexity of this project is, it needs that kind of support to have a sort of long lead time in order to create a new waterfront commercial district. But both that and, one of the things you'll notice is like the building next door, which it's great. It's great that it is going up now, and certainly Gibson Point. But one of the complexity of building on the waterfront is climate change. And so the building code requires us to raise the site. Any sort of ground floor uses needs to be above the design flood elevation by, a foot or two. And then if you want to create a commercial district on that ground floor, that needs to be up. So you have two approaches to that. One is you could create lots of ramping so that you have sort of the first floor of the commercial space that sits, high above the sidewalk. But that isn't necessarily a great way to promote, pedestrian activity. And so we had to sort of, raise everything up. So that's a sort of another complexity. And then finally, we have an image sort of looking on the General Edwards Bridge coming over. This is a vision of what it will be like active at dusk and at night, with lots of folks using the waterfront and folks living there.
And we're gonna open up for questions, but I think there were 1,000 parking spaces.
Yeah, it's
right?
I think 1,114.
Yep, because that gets asked a lot.
Yeah.
So, well, let me ask the first question.
Yeah.
Why Lynn? You could go anywhere with your resources. You could invest anywhere in the state or in the region. Why Lynn?
Well, I think generally we're always looking for opportunities, but partly Lynn has been a sort of great partner, and I think that is a big piece of it, as well as the market conditions and the planning that's gone into it today have made it a really unique opportunity. Yeah.
Go ahead and grill
But you started with the parking, that was my question.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of ask a follow-up parking question. The 1,100 spaces, is that, the second one, that one.
Yep.
Is that include the residence parking?
Yes.
And for how many units? 800 something?
So it's 850 spaces. So I think we're at about 1.08 spaces per unit. And then we have about 200 spaces for the commercials, and then about 50 spaces that is located here that would be dedicated to sort of the DCR park. But a lot of that is going to, in actuality, the way that that's going to work is that it's going to be shared parking for, the commercial, for the park. We want it to be seamless so that, folks can, if you're driving here, you can come here, park, and be able to avail yourself of the park or, restaurant. The other thing that's happening, and I think there's more work to be done here, is to think about, any of the improvements that happen along the Linway and any of the sort of bike lanes or bike improvements, that there is good access to be able to bike, into the site. And then in terms of the long-term vision and the promenade that sort of extends past the harbor park and sort of beyond in the harbor, we want folks to be able to, to connect to that as well.
And are those additional sites going to be no overnight parking so that the residents can? Because some residents are going to have two cars. What they're going to do?
Yeah. I mean, in our experience, there really will be a mix of folks. Some folks will live here. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but some folks will live here and not even have a car. Yeah. And so we think that the 1.08 will be sufficient.
I understand the concern that there's going to be retail and a beautiful park and nowhere to park.
Yep.
To go there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So with you kind of see it like the half circle that used to be the turn in to the hotel. Is that going to remain as a turn in, like for a potential bus stop or?
Well, so I think, so thanks for pointing that out. So one important component of this plan, when we were meeting early on and looking at the site plan, one of the important aspects here was to be able to open the site up and have it be porous so that, I mean, ideally that it would create a street network so the South Harbor would become, what would feel like a public street network that you could come in and you wouldn't, that it was not a gate, like, as you said, like a gated apartment community. And so, so part of the one of the moves to do that was to actually move the traffic light over so that it was between the Post Road property, which is currently under development, and these buildings, so that there was a natural street artery right to the waterfront and then to the heart of the park. So one move is we're going to be moving. So currently the light is here, right at the jug handle, moving this here, and then this piece is owned by DCR because it's formally part of the Linway. So we are going to have to work that out to figure out what the eventual condition is of the jug handle. Yeah.
Jim?
The Post Road project is completely independent of this project?
It is, yeah.
What is that going to be?
I believe it's 225 apartments. There's no commercial, just housing. And I will say they've been great to work with. When they were much farther ahead than we are. Obviously, when they bought the site, it was fully permitted, through MIPA, Chapter 91, and site plan approval. And they were, when we started doing planning for the site, they actually worked with us to move the building over about 50 feet, so that we could create a central road that could service both sides. And that could create, an opening for some retail. And that's actually one of the things we're going to be working with them on, is what this space is going to be. There are some opportunities to have some of that be paved to put in food trucks, so that there's a sort of two-side, in some ways a two-sided retail street on this piece. So
Where are you locating the parking, the 1,000-spot parking?
So all three of these buildings has essentially parking at grade. And then these two buildings have 2 levels of parking at grade. And it's tucked, so the retail is along this spine here, and it fronts it. So it's all hidden parking. You won't really be able to see it from the road, but it's here. So I think we have about, I can't remember exactly, but I think we have about 250 surface spaces between, the lots in here, but most of the parking is located under the housing.
And there's green space to the Post Road project?
Yeah.
Right, if you could just point to that.
Here,
Right.
yeah.
Jim, the Post Road project was a by right project, meaning that the zoning allowed it by right. So people like Rick and myself, we would love to see commercial, on the first floor, but we couldn't dictate that. Yeah, so, whereas we had influence on this project.
This might be a better question for Jim, but Jim, I know that when Post Road was first going through their process, they spoke about a second phase potentially to put a tower at the back. Was that still in
So
play?
you want to grab it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
so the whole site is permitted, I think, for 515 units or 525.
25.
525. And so originally, when it was permitted, I think there were 4 buildings when it went through site plan
Three.
review.
Three
Those
buildings,
3 buildings. You should probably.
No,
take
go
that.
ahead, you do. I'd
So-
rather sit here.
But so they went through a notice of project change through MIPA and basically created 2 buildings. And one is going up right now, which is, I think it's a 6-story building. And so they have another 200 units that they plan to build a tower here. And it includes this green space park, which is required under their MIPA certificate. So, currently, the amount of open space here is required, and they will actually have to go through, back through chapter 91 to revise the license.
Chapter 91 is state permanent, right?
Yeah.
So, Rick, we see it a lot where kind of the economics change, and so the projects change and they adjust. But as you know, you could build as high as, I want to say 20 stories here by right.
Yeah.
But economically, I don't know who's going to do that right now. We're kind of lucky as far as interest rates have gone skyrocketing, construction costs have skyrocketed, and we were still able to get the largest investment in our history. And so we're happy about that. To answer your question, as Noah just said, Post Road changed. They altered their plans. They still kept it by right, so we couldn't take a bite of the apple and try to get some commercial space in there. So
Will it be above 6 stories, the tower?
I do not think it will be. Do you remember?
I mean, their current plan is that, yeah, it would be.
It's still going, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. I'm skeptical on that, so we'll see what happens.
But it's having this much housing down on the waterfront is, it's great. It will help support the commercial district. It will populate the park. It's great.
What you're starting to see, so we set the vision, right? And so across the street, 811 Linway was a used car place. It's now, we hopefully within the next year, we'll see construction of a mixed use. So you're starting to see current uses changing, right? So, we're the only place in the world that has a Walmart that if you stood on the roof, you'd have a great view of the Atlantic Ocean, right? And so you'll start to see changes because of the investment. And quite frankly, what's happening is because of these investment, those prior uses, you can get so much more money for the land, right, in the property and come up with this site. So it's really exciting time for the city because you're seeing a change, right? And so those of us that have lived here our whole lives, we've always seen the potential, and now we're actually seeing change happening. I did want to recognize Nicole McLean, who got sworn in last night. She's on the phone, so Counselor, congratulations and welcome. Other questions? Sorry.
Real quick, you just mentioned the used car lot site. Is that mixed use development going to include the oil change place
The oil change place.
right next door, the old one? You know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about?
am. Not yet, not yet. So that one there, so you know where the Starbucks is.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at Starbucks,
Yeah,
it's to the right,
I know
right?
that one.
Okay, so that's the one that's happening now,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not the left.
not to the left, to the right. The one on the left's on our radar though. And then when you look at this huge project, across the street, the former gear plant, GE gear plant site, that is 60 acres with a potential train stop. I mean, to me, it's the most valuable piece of land that the city can offer. We don't own it, of course, but we see great potential there for jobs. We need jobs, for jobs and housing. Yes, sir, Patrick.
Just a couple of questions. First, is there any consideration to some kind of connecting the two sides of the Linway, via some kind of bridge or something like that? And my second question, and I don't know if you're giving any consideration and maybe doing a market study to see if Lynn could support, a small hotel, and whether something like that would fit within your vision for your project.
Well, on the connectivity, we very much are looking forward to the planning effort that's going on right now to think about sort of reimagining the Linway and connecting to the Riverworks commuter rail station. So I think that there were so many things that attracted us to this site, the Harbor Park, the planning, but certainly one of them was the proximity of the Riverworks commuter rail station, and we know that there's still a long way to go, but that that's really important. I think any of the effort to make the Linway sort of work sort of on both sides and promote a little bit, sort of safer, more welcoming pedestrian environment will be helpful. And then in addition, so I mean, public transit is a big piece here, and folks will use the bus as well. And so I think I think we're planning on, folks who are living here to be using the bus as well.
Under the hotel question, Patrick, so EDIC hired CBRE to do a hotel study, right? So they looked at the entire city and said, where would the best place, because we want a hotel. And so believe it or not, the place where they said was the best spot for a hotel is the former Christie site down at the MDC Rotary. No, that's not me speaking, that was the study. But we have a study we're actively going after. She just canceled the Beauport in Gloucester, right? That hotel, something like that would be awesome in this area. We're trying to get her to come to Lynn. We had a meeting, but she canceled. But so we're actively recruiting. We think that it's time for a hotel. We want a hotel in the city. So, yeah. And then your question regarding the connectivity, it's like the Great Divide, the Linway. It's 4 or 5 lanes of traffic that's like sterile drive. And our goal, and Aaron's not here, but as a planner, is how do you connect the waterfront to the rest of the city? Never mind the other side of the Linway, right? And so we're constantly thinking on that. So,
Jim, what will the crossing at the northern strand
yeah,
be like?
you have that.
I don't have an image.
Well, I'll send you. So you can't see it on here.
Yeah.
But it definitely has been well thought out and planned, and I'll send you a slide that shows exactly the crossing. But yeah, it's kind of, Tommy McGee were here, he'd speak 20 minutes on it. He was telling me the other
He'll be
day,
back
he went from Lynn over all the way to Everett.
to go to the casino.
He didn't tell me where he went, Glenn. But yeah, so. And the other thing that's happening on the waterfront, of course, is the ferry, right? And so,
Yeah.
We had the month of July and August, 20,000 passengers on the commuter ferry. And so that the development that's happening feeds into the passengers. A lot of folks that live at the Beacon site work in Boston took that. And so it definitely is coming back next summer, but we want it every year. We want it 52 weeks a year. So the waterfront is dramatically changing.
And I think that's actually, we need to have further discussions about how to really take advantage of the water. And we'll have further discussions with DCR and the city around, whether there's opportunity for a kayak launch or other ways to actually, engage it. Because, the solution that we have come up with for the coastal bank was in part many conversations with coastal zone management, and we'll have many more, I know. But part of it was to essentially seed, where the bulkhead failed, and build a stone revetment on the sort of landward side of the new coastal beach. And so there is all this beach space that is essentially gonna be, exposed and created, and we're likely to leave the piles there, but cut them down. So this will all potentially be accessible. So I think there really is an opportunity there, and we look forward to planning.
I'm a big ocean kayaker, so I like the idea of the kayak launch.
We have a program, the EDIC land where the commuter ferry is. We have a
Yeah.
kayak program there as well.
Yeah.
So I expect to see you out there this summer.
Jim, is the hopes that you'll be able to, on this walkway, walk from here all the way to the ferry?
Yeah, so when we started the first planning session was 2006, right?
Mhm.
And so when we came up with those meetings I talked about,
Mhm.
the goal that we set was to be able to walk from the MDC Rotary to the GE Bridge, right? So you're starting to see that, like when when the Beacon Chevrolet site was built,
Mhm.
there's a promenade there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So, Rick knows because he's on the EDIC board, but we're currently trying to put a boardwalk along the ferry site that will connect to the clock tower site, which then they will build their boardwalk. So all of a sudden, you'll be able to walk within a year from Heritage State Park to the ferry site. So it's starting, the pieces are coming. So now you jump to this end and you'll have a promenade from the GE Bridge down towards Post Road, which will lead to the Harbor Park. And
So
so
like where the DPW is back of that
it's
big
come,
pump
yeah,
is gonna be the walkway.
that's the goal, yeah. So, and to answer your question, we have a map, we have a plan, you know, and we want that walkway. We want, like Lynn Shore Drive.
Yeah.
Right, we want that here, same water, same ocean, same views. And we think we can do that.
Awesome.
And it's part of, when he talks about like chapter 91, he and I eat and breathe this stuff, but that's a state license. And so any waterfront development, you have to get a chapter 91 license. And really what it comes down to is public access. So if you're going to develop on the water, how will the public have access? And so anytime there's waterfront development, there's going to be public access along the water. Done.
Thank you. A couple of years ago, I had some family and friends up from Myrtle Beach, and we traveled down the Linway. They were pleased with all the progress. We drove by the breakwater, and my friend from Myrtle Beach said, "Why aren't there any balconies on these?"
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I was trying to just, what are these buildings gonna look like? And also a secondary question is, we went into the thinking of not building condos as compared to apartments.
Before you answer that question.
Yeah.
So Donald,
Yeah.
I'm pro balcony, okay? And so when they were building that, I said, if I lived there, I'd like to sit out on the balcony, read the paper on a Sunday morning, right?
Yeah.
And they just didn't agree with me. And it was again, a by right project that we couldn't, tweak it. But I totally agree with you. It would have been nice. So condos versus apartments, how come you didn't do condos?
Well, the demand for apartments is so great, in terms of the housing crisis that we have, and honestly, the sort of the condo, so a couple things. One is that we're creating a mixed use new waterfront commercial district. And so to do that, it's sort of easier to control sort of all of it, because you need to be able to plan it. If they were to be condo buildings with ground floor, with 26,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, it's a little harder to program it long term, because you're essentially selling off, most of the site. The other thing is the condo market is, it fluctuates over time, every couple of years. And so it's a little harder to sort of plan that long term. And, we're interested in a long-term investment in this site and being here for a long time. And then yeah.
No, go ahead, balconies.
Yeah, so on the balconies, we're definitely planning for balconies.
We're pro balconies.
And yeah, no, absolutely.
On the waterfront,
I know it makes a lot of sense, and to be strategic about it, I think. So, they're more expensive to build, but you can get a premium for them. I suspect, that's really the calculation that a developer will go through, is to think about, is it worth that sort of extra investment? But we will certainly have them, and they'll be strategically located. Yeah.
Now, when you did Fenway, it wasn't like one building, right? And so when you're looking at Lynn, and obviously you're committing $450 million. Right?
Yeah.
Are you done investing in the city, or are there other potential opportunities?
No, we definitely look forward to, other opportunities down the road, 100%.
One issue with the financing, about the apartment issue,
Mhm.
is that it's very difficult to finance, almost impossible to finance condos right now. And part of it, especially with large projects, you have to sell so many units before the banks will
Yeah.
do the permanent finance, the final financing. That's why it's not that developers are against condos, that nobody can finance it.
Well, you're seeing that, you look at Blossom Street not on the non-water side. Originally was going to be a condo project. They couldn't get the sales. They turned it into apartments. The Porthole Pub, local developer, McGrath owns that. He has a vision of condos. You're not seeing that moving forward just yet. So totally agree with what you just said. Other questions?
Is that the same with the lot Central Square?
So Central Square, the vacant lot in Central
Yeah.
Square is owned by Procopio.
Yeah.
We meet with him, we're trying to push it because nobody wants a vacant lot in the middle of the downtown. He got permitted for a 10-story building there and, doesn't think he can finance it right now. Yeah, so, yeah. Yes, sir.
Given all the development along the Linway and the increased units and housing, is the city giving any thought to maybe having a shuttle service, funded by the city to provide, transit for the people in the apartments, either to the downtown or to the Wonderland train station, or even to the ferry or to the, commuter rail stop? I mean, is there some thought being given on the city side to providing that type of shuttle service? How would you, finance that? I don't know if the MTA offers incentives for what they're
Well, let's start with the finance question. So the great thing about this type of a project is, it brings in a lot of revenue, right? And so forget the taxes for a moment. Just the building permits, and we'll give him a little bit of chest pain, but just the building permits. Get the paddles ready, going. But just the building permits, Patrick, is going to be about, it's for every 100 million, it's about $1 million. Yeah, so this will be $4 million just in permits, right? So that money goes into, as Rick knows, into the general fund, which goes towards schools, fire, police, et cetera, right? So how would you finance something like that? I could make that argument that this is certainly producing tax revenue, building permits. So that's how kind of a city planner would look at it. Where do you come up with the money? These
Well,
projects.
plus as you get more residential units, you're creating critical mass. to
Yeah.
Make a shuttle bus.
When Patrick was asking the
Wonderful.
question, I was thinking the chicken and the egg, right? Because we don't, like, if I said to the city council today, would you folks consider that idea, the shuttle? They would say, where's the demand, right? So it's the chicken and the egg. So what we're creating now is a change, which I believe is a strong positive change. We're bringing people with disposable income. We're creating commercial space. We're creating recreational space. Those types of things will be good problems that we'll face in the next several years.
I also think that there is an opportunity to increase demand on the MBTA bus system. And so, there's already bus service, and to the extent that we can sort of feed into that and improve that, would be good too.
Jim, isn't there a Linway being done over? Isn't there a project in the works already?
So there's, I think Noah touched upon it. It's reimagining the Linway, so it's kind of in the planning stages. And, the Linway has always been the Linway in our lifetime, right? It's boom, right? And so the thinking, and I'm not a planner, but the thinking behind it is, can it change, right? Can it go down to this many lanes? So there's all types of meetings that'll be happening, public input will be happening, elected officials will have input. So it's reimagining the Linway. And so that's kind of going on
And
now.
part of that, we're excited about that, the idea that there'll be some sort of dedicated bike lanes there too. So that there'll be multiple ways for folks to access the site and the park, and really encourage, to folks to be able to bike along the water or walk.
And we don't want I just don't want to send out the wrong message. We don't want the Linway to be all housing. That's not what we want.
Yeah.
When we set the plan, we wanted jobs. We wanted place where people can shop. We wanted recreational space. So as we're moving forward with projects, that's always been kind of our compass, right? As far as what would go there. So as we're moving forward, when you go across the street to the gear plant, I think it's a great opportunity for jobs, so life science, those types of jobs, good paying jobs. So any other questions? I told them we're going to grow them. I do want to thank the chamber. The night of the council meeting on this project, the chamber was there. They sent a letter supporting this project. So I want to thank the chamber for your support on this project. I think it's a game changer.
It's something that Lynn can truly be proud of once it's done.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna attract.
I do too.
Jim, I don't know if you addressed it on the chat, but I did see a question pop up earlier about the affordability piece. Somebody had asked about the percentage of affordability.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of
so-
the eight, okay, yep, so, good question, I'm sorry, I didn't see that, Catherine. 850 units, 10% are going to be affordable, is that correct, 85 units?
At the 60% AMI.
Right. Yep, thank you, Rick, I didn't see the question. Any other questions? No, thank you so much for believing in Lynn and investing in Lynn. We look forward, the city's kind of role now has been, now the torch gets passed to the state. And so the city permitting, we have some influence and control over. The state, I just want to keep kicking them to get them to move. You know, you need your chapter 91, you need your MEPA permitting and
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So the city, I know that the mayor feels strongly about this project. We will be hand in hand with you as we go to the state to the next permitting office.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. Happy to come back, multiple times as we're going through the process, and we really appreciate your support. We're here and looking forward to becoming part of the community and seeing this through. It's gonna be a long road. We have a lot of work to do with through this, as you said, the state permitting. Unfortunately, the way it works is you have to go through the MEPA process and then start the chapter 91 process. So it's, we have a little ways to go, but it's going to be great. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Studies that were done down there,
Oh, I
from
know.
Sasaki on down the line,
Yeah.
finally coming to fruition.
It's the best part of my job, I'll speak personally, is you do all these studies. I used to come to the chamber during the recession and talk about studies and plans, and the chamber would go, yeah, we need the projects. And now you're starting to see major development, and it's really exciting, so.
But it's really good planning. I mean, it's very rare of a project this size for a developer to be able to build something as of right.
Do you
We
have
are
a
seeing-
guesstimate
so-
of how long it's gonna take for the permitting to actually start the project?
We think it's about 18 months.
Now,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a state permitting, and the
That's
city's
state
all done.
permitting.
So, yeah.
Are you helped at all by the former car dealership, chapter 91 process?
The former car dealership.
The
to the right.
old Bob Gress,
Oh, the Beacon Chevrolet?
yeah,
No, they don't take that into consideration. It's totally separate. Yeah.
18 months, is a long time.
Yeah.
They busy? They must have worked on their plate or.
state.
So for the,
Am I being recorded?
no. Jim,
Oh,
and,
yes, it is.
and when Brendan Crichton was on the city council, he filed this 43D, I think it's 43D, which means on the waterfront, it's expedited permitting. So this is an expedited permitting in the state, but you're dealing with, I don't see any state officials involved. Jim, you're dealing with bureaucrats that they just want to look and look and look and look and hopefully find a problem. And it's like, we want this to happen,
I actually thought 18 months was, I thought you were gonna say like 3 years.
No.
So,
I mean, there's a debate going on in the state around the waterfront. And so I don't know if you remember, there were a few years ago, the city of Boston had their municipal harbor plan
Right,
that essentially got thrown out. And so.
well, that's because of Don Chaparro, but.
Right, but, so there's this debate going on around, how we should be treating, the water's edge. And so on one side, there's this argument about climate resiliency and, and trying to protect, the development and deal with sea level rise and storm surge. And then on the other side, it's about, well, what should the natural condition be of the shoreline? And so there are some folks who argue that we should just let this erode, that these tide plans should never have been filled to begin with, and therefore it should just be left to erode. But if we don't have a fortified coastal bank, we can't put, it wouldn't make any sense to build a park here, because it would be temporary. So it's that debate is happening, and we're So any project that's going through a state permitting process on the waterfront is sort of right in the middle of it.
Did the seaport in Boston kinda, cause I used to park there for $17 in a dirt lot and look at it now.
Yeah.
Do we learn a lot from the seaport that's helping you along with this stuff?
Yeah, I think, I think I think that took a long time too. And so, and that, I mean, I think that the governor is starting to create a vision and, you know, more direction around how to sort of deal with the waterfront. I think that the state is coming out with more guidelines to sort of address it so that you don't relitigate it every single time. Or I shouldn't use the word litigate, but that you don't like argue it every single time. But it takes a long time, and there's a very comprehensive review process. And you know, we submitted our initial sort of impact report to the state, and that's being reviewed now. We'll get comments in mid-January from every state agency, and then from there we'll have to do a bunch of studies, everything from traffic to energy to flood performance modeling, in a next document that will get sent to the state, which we hope to submit sometime in March. But those are the next steps.
Does that site get storm surge that?
Well, you know, there was when you were doing the master open space planning a few years ago, there was a pretty comprehensive study done by the Woods Hole group to look at that. And it's a fairly protected site. So there isn't a lot of concern about storm surge.
Not in my lifetime. You know, the blizzard of 78 was the storm, a 100-year storm. That affected back then this site as well as the North Harbor site, but that's really the only one that had significant impact since then. So, my last comment though, you were talking about, you know, the process and the bureaucrats and so forth. Boston is making it so challenging on developers. That's why folks like Samuels and others that we're currently working with are looking outside of Boston for a lot of different reasons: time, money, etc. And so,
Oh, and there'll quickly be no more developable sites on the waterfront in UB.
yeah.
That's close to full.
I got one a mile down the street.
Well, I will say, you know, in looking at the, you know, it's extraordinary, the development that's happened along, you know, Revere Beach. But one of the things that we think is an incredible opportunity here is that this site, we hope, will tie these apartment buildings together and create lots of public access with a well thought out and integrated sort of retail street with restaurants, so that it all feels integrated as one neighborhood, regardless of who owns what apartment building. And that's really the vision for the site. We look forward to it.
Balconies.
Balconies.
Before we
Yes.
end, I just
Yeah.
want to say a thank you to Seth and Lynn Community TV for allowing us to use their beautiful space and making it.
Yep. Seth, thank you.
What's that?
Can I give a plug for next week?
Yes.
What do you have coming up? Anything good, Rick?
Next Wednesday, 8:30, right here, is Government Affairs meeting with Chief Reddy and Deputy Chief Bale, talking about the new block system, community cameras, and police recruiting.
Nice.
And I'm gonna do a plug on January 27th, the chamber, we're doing our first home show. And we're looking for any kind of electricians, plumbers, HVAC, window. We're looking for more vendors, and we're gonna have some things for families to come and enjoy the day for free. So keep a watch out for that.
Can you also talk about the Commercial Development Forum on the 23rd at Centerboard?
Go ahead, do that.
There's a Commercial Development Forum on the 23rd. It's a panel discussion. It's
Commercial
in-
lending, correct?
It's in the,
Is that the commercial lending one?
pretty much.
Yeah.
There is, I think, a developer or a lawyer
Mhm.
talking about development generally.
Mhm.
It's at the Centerboard Space, 16 City Hall Square.
Mhm.
A wonderful space designed by a known architectural firm. And will be that space will be a restaurant,
Mhm.
so another restaurant coming to Lynn.
Yep. And what's the date of that?
That's the 23rd, 6 P.M.
Yes.
Go on
Send the
the
board.
Chamber of Commerce site and sign up.
Okay.
It's free, unless you're not a member, in which it's
Not free.
$10.
All right, I think that ends today.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much, right on
Thank
time.
you, Jim.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the plan.